The meeting is hereby called to order. Melanie, could you call the roll, please? Here.
Vice Chair Moyer.
Here.
And Director Du.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. If you can, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So happy October. Welcome to San Francisco Bay Ferry's Board of Directors meeting. This monthly meeting is being conducted in person and by video conference. It's being recorded. To reduce background noise, all video conference participants will be joining meeting in listen-only mode and muted during the discussion. SF Bay Ferry welcomes comments from the public. A public comment period will be set aside after each discussion period, and it will be accepted in person and by video conference. Video conference participants wishing to speak are requested to email your name and item number you'd like to comment on to boardofdirectors@sfbayferry.com. If you're unable to send an email, you will be given an opportunity to speak on the item after those who have signed up to speak on the item. So thanks, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good fall so far, and there's a lot going on. I'll just comment. I've been heavily involved, a lot of meetings around SB 63 and the transportation measure, which is going to be really important for our future, because if you read through the booklet, there are financial needs all over the place, and this particular measure guarantees, if it passes, we get a share of the proceeds, which will be very helpful. And for transit in general in the Bay Area, for us, it's really good if it passes. For other agencies, it's this kind of screaming necessity. A couple of them will really falter if it doesn't pass. So that's for the ballot in November of 2026. That's the plan. I don't believe the governor signed the bill yet. At least I hadn't heard that he has. So he has until October 12th to sign bills, so that's just a few more days, and we'll see if he's. I don't have any reason to think he wouldn't sign it, but I guess you never know. So he's still holding a lot of the bills are still yet not been addressed. So this will be a campaign led by a signature gathering. It's not been done before, and especially on a regional level. So there's a lot of firsts associated with this measure, and a number of us are trying to figure out, kind of how to do this, and we have to do it to some degree in absentia from the public agencies that we're involved with, and the elected officials as well, because it is a citizens measure, because it's being done by a signature gathering. So it's going to be very interesting, and we'll need a lot of help from transportation, mass transit advocates, to really come out and support this. Not easy in this environment, asking folks for additional resources, but that's what we've got to do. And the Bay Area needs a first-in-class mass transit system, and that's what we're working toward. And our system only works well when the other systems work well, and it all has to fit. It all has to fit together. I was just on the ferry front. I've managed to use our service quite a few times lately, and I think continues to perform really well. And seems like there's an awful lot of people on these piers, and so it feels like we're doing quite well. And just want to thank all of the folks here on the SF Bay Ferry team. There's a lot going on, a lot of planning, a lot of work, as well as the blue and gold team and the people who make those vessels hum and function every day. I'll conclude my comments with that. I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Moore.
Great. Thanks, Chair Winderman.
Happy October, everyone, and happy Fleet Week. It's just a great time, even though it's not our traditional Fleet Week, to remember the sacrifices that all of our families who to defend this great nation and go off to foreign lands do for all of us. So if you get to see even a sighting of one such person along the waterfront or elsewhere in the city, please remember to give them your thanks. It's a really important thing that happens, and that's the purpose of Fleet Week. So I'm sorry that the more exotic air show isn't proceeding to lend some excitement and some ferry ridership for us, but I do hope that we can remember that at the end of the day, it is about thanking our troops. And then secondly, I've had a couple of reasons to be reminded lately the importance of public transit to our international visitors and their reliance on it, particularly European visitors. And so just want to commend all of you for what you are doing and emphasize how important future funding is to ensuring that San Francisco retains its prominence as an international city, destination city. So thank you all for having that macro view constantly at your hands. That's it for me.
Thank you, Director Du.
Thank you very much. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to go to Chula Vista for the California Association of Realtors Board and Business meetings. And we stayed at the brand new 4-star resort hotel, the Gaylord Resort and Hotel. And it was directly across the street from the Marine Group. And so I took advantage of the locality and went and toured their facilities. And it was really interesting just to hear their story, how Todd Roberts had actually been assigned to that site by the former owner to shut it down. And he went and saw the potential and asked, for a year to turn it around. And it is, and then he, took it over, and it is what it is today. But they're doing some great work, from new construction on some military vessels to repair and maintenance of super yachts. So it was really fascinating to just see the scope of work that they're doing, and the lift they have. It's the second biggest one in the world, and so that was really just interesting to see that perspective. I also am on the CJF sub-regional committee for Napa Solano, and on the transportation subcommittee. And we met on Monday and talked about, one of the topics that came up was if there was some possibility to have a route from Vallejo to Larkspur to help offset the traffic on Highway 37. And so there was a lot of support for that topic, or that concept. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then, as many of you are aware, there are a lot of discussions around shipbuilding initiatives in the region. And so I've been very involved in that work in Solano County. So hopefully more to come.
Excellent. Thank you. I just finished a panel before this on a Fleet Week panel on the future of shipbuilding in the Bay Area. And I recall when I was reading the minutes, I saw your last month, you said you were heading over there. So we get the continuity of the report. But exciting potential here for the future in terms of shipbuilding. There's certainly a lot of folks who are very involved, and Solano County is central to this, so it's an exciting moment for us. Let me turn it over to our esteemed Executive Director, Seamus Murphy, for the staff report.
Thank you, Chair Wonderman. Thank you all for your support and the work that you're doing on our behalf by keeping these conversations going around the region. It is really important. We've had an opportunity to articulate our needs to some of the potential new shipbuilding facilities that could exist in the future, to make sure that they would meet those needs. And so we're equally excited about that opportunity. I want to invite staff to come and present on a number of issues, starting with Tom Hall on the November schedule change. We are entering the period of the year, since we're a seasonal, we have seasonal ridership where we start to see a dip. And so there are a couple of items on this agenda that seek to minimize that dip and capitalize on the ridership potential that we know exists, starting with the schedule change that we'll be implementing.
Great. Thank you. Tom Hall, Director of Operations and Customer Experience. every schedule change cycle, we come in with a set of priorities. We work collaboratively with across departments at SF Bay Ferry, including our contract operator, to determine what tweaks may need to be made. There was definitely one key priority going into this schedule change cycle, which was to relieve pressure on the 8:20 a.m. Alameda Seaplane trip to San Francisco. In terms of the weekday, it's our highest ridership and occupancy trip across the entire system. Really impacted in terms of high ridership, which is great. There are some downsides to that, which in this particular case, bike capacity became a concern. And so we were seeing on multiple Tuesdays in a row, and then it spilling over into Wednesdays, that we're reaching max capacity on bicycles, which is 50 for the Hydrus class, which is assigned to this particular departure. That was as many as we could carry. In the past, before the pandemic, we could sometimes get away with increasing that number a little bit. Bikes have gotten a lot bigger between e-bikes and cargo bikes, and they take up more space. So 50 really is the true max for the Hydrus class at this point. What happens when we max out on bikes is that passenger then has to make a decision. Do I wait for the next trip, which is currently 55 minutes after that, which is quite a gap? Can I go lock up my bike real quick before this boat leaves, or do I find another way to cross the bay? And of course, that decision is going to impact them the next time they come to ride the ferry. And so we want to mitigate that. As a huge customer experience issue, in addition to max outs. That is functionally a max out for our bicycle riders who we want to encourage. So our primary goal going into this schedule change was to add a second trip after that trip before the 9:15 trip that leaves from Alameda Seaplane, right around that 8:45 timeframe. So we looked at a number of options, about 6 or 7 options on how we could achieve that with our existing crewing and vessel lineup. And we ran some analysis, again, an interdepartmental analysis and consideration of this. And one solution did have the lowest impact across the rest of the system, and that was to replace the 9 a.m. Harbor Bay trip with an 8:45 Alameda Seaplane trip. About 40 people on average ride that Harbor Bay trip. Certainly, we understand it's going to be a negative impact for those folks. We do see on that particular trip, there's very little drop off in ridership for Friday, which indicates that it's largely, but not exclusively, a recreational trip. It's kind of in that shoulder commute period where it's some folks who won't necessarily be negatively impacted if they need to wait till 9:30, which is the next trip. Some folks, of course, will have to make the decision to move up to the 8:30 a.m. trip. That change did trigger a couple of other changes after that based on what that boat is doing. And so what we did is essentially simplify and slightly reduce the Harbor Bay morning commute. So it'll be hourly service on the half hour between 6:30 a.m. and 11:30 a.m. Meanwhile, Alameda Seaplane will get one crucial additional trip in the 8 o'clock hour, and then another additional trip in the 9 o'clock hour. The next
What's the
schedule,
frequency on Harbor Bay now that we're moving out of?
I'm sorry, one more time.
Since we're going to sort of take some service back on Harbor Bay, what's the frequency what do they get now?
Great. Right now they have hourly service plus 2 extra trips in between a couple of those hours. So it's 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10:40, and 11:50. We're shrinking that by 2 trips and making everything on the half hour. So they will lose that second trip is a pretty low ridership trip, except in the summer on Fridays. Not a whole lot of commuters at 10 a.m. On a Friday these days, but certainly there is some reduction of service there. Overall, system-wide, we're completely flat on the number of trips we're offering. We're just redeploying a couple of those trips over to Alameda Seaplane. This schedule goes into effect on November 3rd and will be in effect until early March of 2026. And we'll be analyzing, as we always do. One of our key priorities in every schedule change cycle is to analyze what happened with the changes we had just made. How did that impact ridership on trips around the trip that we changed? Are we seeing any different patterns because of that? So we'll continue to analyze that. We're notifying passengers. We've begun that work this week. Both on the Harbor Bay side, in addition to the Alameda Seaplane folks. We do think some folks that are currently riding the 8:20 a.m. trip will proactively move over to the 8:45, which will increase capacity on both of those trips to be able to allow more people to reliably get to the city as a part of their commute. Happy to answer any questions.
I just really appreciate the creativity. Look forward to hearing the results in March. But to be stranded as a bike rider when you're doing everything you can, it sounds horrifying. So thank you for working on that problem.
I'll just say, recall opening up a seaplane in the pandemic and thinking about what this would be like. And it's, on the positive side, it's great to see that people are using it and that, there are so many bikes and so forth. So I think it's largely good news.
Great. Thank you, Tom. So we took delivery of the final vessel in the Dorado class. The Zalafis arrived and it's in operation. We will be celebrating that. I wanted to take this opportunity to ask Tim Hanners to just share a little bit about the Zalafis and the overall Dorado class, since this is the final vessel in that class and final diesel vessel that we will be procuring as an agency. So exciting transition, and these vessels have been just tremendous additions to the fleet. Good afternoon.
I'm joined here by Ryan Trzynski from Aurora Marine Design. Just wanted to take a few minutes to discuss the Dorado class vessels and celebrate kind of the delivery of the Zalafis, which is the last of the class. WETA partnered with Maverick Marine, 123 Design, and Aurora Marine Design to complete these vessels. Maverick Marine built the vessel, 123 Naval Architects designed, and Aurora Marine Design provided the construction management and also improvements to align our propulsion and system integration, not only with this class of vessels, but to ensure that it meets the standards of the rest of our fleet, and we're able to maintain and operate the vessels. The Carl and Zalfis represent the next generation of the class, which is equipped with MAN Tier 4 plus DPF engines, which are the first to be approved in a high-speed vessel at this capacity and meet the CARB regulations. So that's something to celebrate and something that the team put a lot of work into. Specifically, I want to thank Aurora Marine Design for just the dedication in finding that solution. There was a lot of trips made, a lot of engineering discussions. This had never been done, and they really took the time and put in the effort to make this a solution for us. And it's good to know that these two vessels can operate in the state of California for the foreseeable future. The vessel was delivered in August and entered service quickly thereafter on September 27th. We have a christening scheduled for October 31st to celebrate. The vessel is currently operating on some of our busiest routes. It's performing to specs, and we're very happy with the class and the progression that we've made from boat 1 to boat 4. Strong collaboration once again between our agency, Maverick Marine, Aurora Marine Design 123, and Blue and Gold, and all the improvements we were able to make. It's kind of unfortunate because we feel like we've, at this point, after you get through 4, you've really kind of dialed it in and you've got a lot of people involved. And now we're ending the program, but we're excited to know that these boats are going to be serving our passengers for at least the next 25 years. I'd now like to pass it over to Ryan to discuss some of the highlights of the program.
Thank you, Tim. The design of this vessel was prioritized around efficiency from the very start, starting with the hull form from 123 and working into a collaborative weight approach and control plan with Maverick Marine. And the whole idea there was to minimize emissions, maximize speed, maximize fuel economy without having any lack of accommodations for our passengers. Previously, we've highlighted when Carl came down, the emissions reductions, 50% less NOx, 80% less particulate matter. Today, I'd like to highlight some real world operational data in a unit that might resonate more easily for all of us. The WETA standard high-speed large capacity ferries have an average fuel consumption of 324 gallons per hour. Dorado class vessels are averaging 227. That's a savings of 97 gallons per hour, or roughly $400 at our average fuel cost. Over a typical operating year of about 2,500 hours, that translates to a reduction of nearly 250,000 gallons of fuel, or about $1 million. These results validate the design approach, balancing speed, comfort, and efficiency in a way that's measurable and meaningful to our passengers, our environmental goals, and our operations. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to share these results and to be a part of this groundbreaking program. Thank you as well.
Thanks, Ryan. With that, and the Zalphus now in service, that officially kind of wraps up the Dorado class build. We're going to take lessons learned from this project and the efficiencies gained and roll this into the reef program. And we're all excited, and Aurora Marine Design is also on those teams. And so we're going to work together and continue to get as much efficiency as we can, because it's not just about battery technology, but there's a lot that goes into the hull and the weight control program and everything else that's involved in building these boats. So thank you to the board, and yeah, ready to celebrate.
Yeah, I recall a trip we took to Portsmouth, and Nina Reynolds and I took, that there was a hovercraft we took one way across, and then we took this vessel back. So they had both. And we got to go and really kind of look around the boat, and we both really liked it. So agreed that we would try to encourage Maverick Marina to propose on the next proposal. And it was very, you could tell there it was just a very high quality vessel that they had that they were operating. And so it's it was sort of in the mind's eye at that point that we could have that relationship, and they came and they set up, and I think it's a great story. And each of these vessels has sort of improved over the last, and we've improved the technology, and the results are, speak for themselves. So it's really been a great, I think it's part of the great story at SF Bay Ferry that we were able to do this. And so thank you for your help in making it happen and working through. I'm sure there were myriad issues that had to be overcome in order to do this, but it sets the stage for the next round. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks. I would just add that the vessel Carl has been nominated for Vessel of the Year by Workboat, one of the premier maritime publications out there. So we'll find out soon if it receives that. But all of these benefits, the emissions reduction benefits, the overall quality of the ride factor in to that decision. So fingers crossed.
I saw in your report you're going to have some music and entertainment and start doing that kind of stuff. So for the October 31st christening, is this going to be a costume kind
We'll
of
have
thing?
to get
or,
creative. Yeah.
it seems to me may as well do something.
Yeah.
People around here like Halloween.
It
So
would be disappointing if we didn't.
yeah.
So Arthi, I'm going to invite Arthi up to talk about Clipper 2.0. We have an update on Clipper 2.0. I think everybody's probably been hearing about the rollout of the next iteration of Clipper. Certainly a really important topic for us, because we are, on a percentage basis, one of the largest, our ridership is one of the largest users of the Clipper system compared to other agencies. So Arthi, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Bunderman and directors. Arthi Kribanan with Planning San Francisco Bay Ferry. As mentioned in the board packet, I'm here to highlight a few key points happening on Clipper 2. MTC is preparing to launch Clipper 2 account-based system in phases starting November 13th. If the system is technically ready, they will start the full launch of Clipper 2 on November 13th. And if the system isn't ready, they would launch the open payments, which was implemented for BART in August. So this is going to expand region-wide for all the participating operators. What this means to riders is that they can tap a contactless bank card or mobile wallet to board ferry and transit system region-wide, which opens up for riders who are occasionally using it, or for visitors to be able to access our system easily. With the full C2 launch, when that happens, riders will also benefit from the regional discount pilot that the board authorized in August of last year. So that would offer transfer discounts to riders who are transferring from let's say, ferry to BART or vice versa, or to any of the agencies, transit agencies. Just a background, WETA already provides transfer discounts to Soul Trans, AC Transit, and SFMTA. With this MTC's launch, it adds additional agencies like BART to participate, thereby opening a broader network for riders to access the system. With that, I will answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. We're looking forward to it. I used my credit card on BART and the gates opened. Thought that was very exciting. Remember Seamus in Stockholm? Why don't we have this? Why do we have it? So here we go, a step forward. We may not be the first step, but we're the best step.
That's right.
So
Better late
thank
than
you.
never.
Other questions? No, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then speaking of the Carl was featured in the last emergency response training exercise that we had with a number of partners around the region, and Cam Bachman's going to tell us a little bit about that.
All right, good afternoon, Board of Directors. Cam Bachman, Emergency Response and Safety with SF Bay Ferry. Happy to be joined by Tony Heater, Operations Manager for Blue and Gold Fleet. And we're going to talk a little bit about the exercise. If we could go to the next slide just to get a little visual there. So a few weeks ago on September 17th, SF Bay Ferry participated in the SFO full-scale exercise, which simulated an aircraft crash in the San Francisco Bay. The Carl served as the main platform for this scenario and for the exercise, and we were positioned right off Oyster Point Marina. This exercise gave us an important opportunity to test our emergency procedures and evacuation systems on a new vessel class in realistic scenarios. The exercise involved more than 200 participants. We had almost a full boat there. I don't know if you can see it on the image there, but you know, very well participated event. We had over 150 volunteers on board from the city of San Francisco, NERT. We had CERT teams, City College of San Francisco, and a local high school class was there as well. And we were also joined by crews, of course, from Blue and Gold Fleet, but also Angel Island Ferry, Tiburon Ferry, and Golden Gate Ferry were there to help train their teams too. As a part of the exercise, ferry crews deployed our new Dorado class evacuation slides, which we haven't used in an exercise like this before. They also deployed our inflatable rafts and tested coordination under the Vessel Mutual Assistance Plan. And we worked alongside regional fire departments, of course, San Francisco Airport, and the U.S. Coast Guard to support mass rescue operations. We were joined by many, many partners around the Bay Area. There were fire rescue boats from San Francisco, South San Francisco, Marin County, Tiburon, Alameda County, and there was even a helicopter overhead, as you can see from the Coast Guard. The exercise validated the ability of ferry crews to conduct mass rescue operations and reinforced the value of maritime assets in supporting aviation emergencies. It also provided practical lessons for our crews, enhancing our emergency response procedures. I'm going to hand it over to Tony to go through a few more slides, kind of looking at the exercise itself and what the procedures were that we went through.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you.
Go to the next slide. No.
So this is our rescue slide. I'll talk about the equipment just really quick. The IBA, or inflatable buoyant apparatus there, which is essentially a life raft, is inflated and allows a platform for people to clearly stay dry. The slide is right in the middle of being inflated in this photograph, and we use that for two purposes. One, to get from the boat down to the raft in an abandoned ship scenario, but in a VMAP scenario, we use it to get people from the raft back up onto the vessel. So what was unique about this exercise was that we started out as the casualty vessel, which means we were the downed aircraft, and we had to get people off of the downed aircraft. And then once we did that, we switched roles and became the rescue vessel and simulated a ferry boat coming from the ferry building down to
help out in an air crash. So that proved to be challenging. I mean, in a real life scenario, it's definitely better to be the rescue vessel rather than the casualty vessel. But as you can see in that first slide, with over 200 folks on the Carl, that is also true even in an exercise. Deploying the gear with all those people on board was something that was good for us to experience, and from it we definitely drew some. Every time we do this, we get to use equipment that usually we drill on it and we're simulating. We don't get to inflate this stuff, and every time we do, we're able to draw best practices from it, make some adjustments, and really just have a better idea of what's going to happen in a real life situation. In the next slide, I think if you could. So this is, again, you can see us, we're definitely still in the rescue, we're the casualty boat here, people going down the slide. And then go ahead to the next slide. This was the first time that we did a raft to raft exchange. So to give you context, the idea is the biggest aircraft would be 560 passengers leaving SFO. The plan is for these small rescue boats to bring IBAs, smaller IBAs, inflate them and allow these people to get off the aircraft and have some flotation, and then slowly transfer them from those small rafts to our rescue vessel. So that was the first time we definitely did some raft to raft transfers, which we had never done before too. Next slide. I think you can go ahead and go one more. There's a rescue swimmer there. Here's our raft to raft transfers. You can see the small IBA is what they'll be handing out to the aircrafts with people standing on the wings and whatnot. Next slide. And one more. This is interesting here. So this is a new slide. This slide is different than the black slide that you saw earlier. That material is no longer available. And we did a lot of work trying to find something that would be suitable. We were very nervous about having a slide that you couldn't get back up. So this was our first time to do a real exercise. We've done tests with the boat at the dock and off of scaffolding, but this is the new slide and it worked really well. I will say that people were able to come up the slide like they were 17 years old. And they were, because it was Vacaville High School students that they gave us. So it's a little bit of a flawed test there in the sense that they were pretty athletic. But we were able to draw from what we learned there, and we've definitely can make some improvements to it, but it's definitely going to work, and we'll have one of those slides on all the Dorado class vessels. Next slide.
Need an elevator.
One more. So we had crew. We were able to get 10 IBU crew, a couple from Golden Gate, and 7 of our own deckhands to go through this exercise. But it is important to point out that this wasn't a VMAP exercise per se. This was SFO exercising their plan and us participating in it. So that was definitely some challenges because the VMAP plan has some differences from SFO's plan, and you're also dealing with aircraft and boats. So that was good for us. There was a ton of help out there, a lot of support vessels, and we also got support vessels from Golden Gate Ferry as well as Blackwater Diving that was out there to help us retrieve all this gear once it was over. Is there another slide?
No, that's it.
That's it. I'll just say thank you very much for letting us operate this equipment. It's awesome. And I will tell you that all those people, a lot of those people on that boat that day, they're not ferry riders. They were there as volunteers for this exercise. And when you hear the reaction to when they got on the boat and saw how amazing it was, because they really just didn't have any idea what San Francisco Bay Ferry is in their head. They have it. And it's just a testimony to the equipment. It was really, it was great, and it was a lot of fun. So thank you.
Thank you. Great. Any questions?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much. I know how much work goes into all these exercises, and that one sounds particularly complicated. And actually putting people into the bay is very daring. So thank you all for all that you did. It looks like in the pictures that the the weather conditions, the water conditions were as perfect as they're ever going to be. And Tony, I'm particularly interested in how you think the slides would fare in poor weather conditions.
Sure. That's a very good point. It definitely came up post, but when they planned this, it was a really good chance that was just because of the time of the day, time of the year. That is a very windy and rough location, and we definitely got lucky. I will say that the last time we did this in Bay Ferry 6, it was not the case. We were in the Central Bay when we did it. We participated with Golden Gate in that, and our equipment is definitely going to be fine. This plan that they have to get people off the airplane, I think they definitely have some questions after the exercise, which is great for them because they're going to be able to look at it and maybe make some adjustments to how they intend to get 560 people off an airplane and onto a ferry boat. So we're all discussing that, and there'll definitely be changes and changes to best practices moving forward. But we'll be good in rough weather.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm familiar with the area. It's a pretty major windsurfing area, and I've heard in my prior years, I've heard a lot of emergency calls to rescue windsurfers actually in that spot. So I was surprised when I saw that's where you all picked, but it looked pristine. Cam, question for you, or either of you for that matter. What would be your biggest learning, and what would you say that as a board or as an organization we need to be thinking about?
I think one of our biggest learnings was just how useful this was for us, and to coordinate with all these other agencies at the same time. We got a lot of value from this. So I would just like to see our agency lean into this approach even more, and take on more exercises and more regional partnerships, because I think we learned a lot from that, and they all learned a lot about our ferry system as a part of this as well. And I think that brings a lot of value to the region too. So I would say that was one sort of like overarching lesson that we learned, is that we need to keep doing this and continue to participate in these exercises as an agency. And then there were more nitty gritty, operational, detail oriented takeaways that I think we learned, as far as deploying the slides on the Dorado class vessels, and how we can expedite evacuations off of those vessels that we're looking at internally. Going to see if we can make some changes to expedite those.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. Really appreciate the complexity here and the reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, I echo her comments and appreciate the work you guys did and the opportunity that presented for us. And curious though, like, so they have to climb back up the slide. And so, yes, we had 17-year-olds, but for less physically able folks, how do we handle that?
Yes. So we have rope ladders, we have knotted ropes, and we have block and tackle systems with harnesses, as well as cradles that we can use. In Bay Ferry 6, we were able to have a wider array of athleticism that was there. Also, we brought more people up, and we also brought unconscious mannequins, weighted mannequins, up with our block and tackle system. So in that case, we weren't even able to use all that stuff because they just shimmied up the rope. But again, this wasn't us testing our plan, and all those people on the boat needed to, it was a huge scale exercise. So they needed now to get transported to the hospitals, and they went to a triage area where they had more stuff to do. So we couldn't just sit there and work on our equipment, it's okay. We still took a lot from it, but I do think that what we learned is that with the addition of the vessel classes, now we have a lot of different vessels, a lot of different vessel classes, and they all have their own unique idiosyncrasies. And one of the things we're learning is that we have to get more innovative, more creative, and about training and staying fresh on these vessels. Because as a crew member, you might not get on a Carl for a month or two, and then you've been on the Hydrus for the last 2 months, and now all of a sudden we throw a Carl in your service. And so that's something that we're realizing and having a lot of discussions about, is how to get more creative, more innovative, and get these crews trained to the levels they need to be at.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm getting thrown in a pool tonight. It's for charity, but I'm trying to decide between the ropes and the harness or the cradle.
Yeah, we'll bring
So
them
I
up.
may need you guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good job.
Okay, thanks. Chair Wonderman, you have financial statements and also 2 legislative reports in your packet. Only thing I would point out on the legislative reports is that for our state report, the cap and trade system was reauthorized.
Yeah.
So that's very good for us with the TIRCP program being preserved as a part of it. And we've done very well in that program. So we're happy to see that is going to continue. On the federal side, obviously the question is what impacts has the federal shutdown had on our agency in particular. We haven't seen any overt impacts so far. The federal funding spigot is still on. We've had some canceled meetings with some federal partners that we do need to have eventually. And so that's really the extent of the impacts, and obviously pretty unpredictable moving forward what the impacts might be if it continues for too long. With that, I would like to ask Mike Gowerty to provide us with a ridership report.
Glad somebody took you up on it. Last month, over 275,000 riders. So 94% of September ridership in 2019. Great news, not quite 100% as we were in May of this year, but inching closer. Year over year, 16% higher. And big drivers of our September ridership were Labor Day, Giants games, and in particular, a very good surprise, the Valkyries games, which has actually outperformed the Warrior games. So really excited to see that. Just very briefly, I'll note a couple things that we've changed in the report this month. As we get to a new normal and begin to consistently get to the point of where we were in 2019, we're beginning to monitor some of the things we were in 2019, like leave behinds in particular. And so we've added a few charts and this ability to kind of proactively track which individual trips on the weekdays and weekends we're approaching the capacity threshold. See those patterns before they become problematic and ideally address them. And the one that kind of pops in the first report we've done here is that 820 seaplane trip that Tom mentioned earlier. So hopefully we see more and more of these problems pop up so we can address them because that means people are coming back to our system in mass. As the ridership report continues to evolve, if you have any suggestions or questions about things to track going forward, please reach out to me or the rest of the planning team. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great report and it's an improved report, and I think tracking the miss-outs is is the right thing to do. So because I'm sure it's really frustrating for people when that happens, and you waited and it's not like there's another ferry right behind it. So somehow or other we need to think about absolutely minimizing that, even though it's a good, it could be in the category of good problem to have because there's demand. But if we keep missing out, then there will be less demand. People will find another alternative. I took Bart in the other day, and so I was on my way to take Bart home, and I saw a thing come up that said there was the station at Embarcadero filled with smoke. So I took the ferry home. Ferry didn't fill up with smoke. I did need to, make some adjustments at Oakland, but I think the issue around reliability and just feeling real comfortable that what one expects is going to happen is great. And I did note in the report that you're a little bit down on the reliability in the last iteration. We dropped on the not that we're missing the run, but the delays are a little bit more. Is there a reason you think that that's happening?
That's a good segue for Tom Hall to give us a reliability report. There are
Go for it.
some issues to point out.
So we work like a team.
Phenomenal segue. Thanks, Chair Wonderman. Just wanted to flag 2 items from the reliability report. One is exactly what you were talking about. We did see the numbers go down a little bit on time performance. Reliability remains really high, so we're canceling very few trips. Thankfully, our fleet is in phenomenal shape. I think this week we had 17 vessels out of the 19 available, which is an incredible number. certainly when I started, I think when a lot of people started, we didn't have 17 vessels, period, let alone 17 that could operate. So reliability is really good. On-time performance did slip, and there's really a key factor there, which is Vallejo weekends. And so this is something that we've brought to you in the past and explained the issues there in the past. We've made some schedule adjustments over the years. It's really a summer problem. And during those particularly peak weekends, if there's a Giants home game, or a big special event, we see droves of people come out to Vallejo and our other terminals to take the ferry. And so we're going to take a look at every data asset we have at our disposal going into the next peak season. There's no schedule changes for weekend service this coming schedule change, but we are going into the off season. Ahead of March 2026, we're going to look at everything we can to see what adjustments we need to make. We're also going to talk to crews. We've obviously reviewed video and talked to crews and Blue and Gold's operations management in the past to try to assess what we can do better to allow that. Part of the factor is that folks on the weekends are not in a huge hurry to get anywhere. And so if they have strollers or bikes or big groups, there can be confusion about tickets. We think that open payments will help quite a bit for those folks that are just paying for themselves and don't have a Clipper card. We think that'll help speed things up, but we're going to assess everything. We'll never compromise safety, but we do want to get things moving more quickly on weekends so that we don't fall behind. So we'll be bringing some matters to you ahead of next summer on how we plan to address this. The second item we wanted to flag, not something typically covered in the reliability report, which is special event service. There's typically zero problems with reliability on special event service because it's a reservation-based system with capacities set and specific times when the boats arrive and depart. We did have an issue with our outside ticketing partner for the last weekend of Giant service where there was a bad code was essentially deployed to production, which allowed our Oakland and Alameda service to Oracle Park to be oversold. And so on the final Saturday of the season, it was oversold by about 94 tickets going to the game and 50 coming back. Once Blue and Gold realized what was happening, their dockside, they immediately took actions to try to get as many people as they could to the ball game and find other accommodations for the other folks. That resulted in that trip being quite late to the game. I think it arrived in the second inning, which is not good, despite there being no stakes for the Giants at that point. Still a bad experience. And so we reached out to all of the passengers who held tickets for that game, offered them our condolences, offered them refunds and complimentary vouchers going forward. We don't want that to be the last experience they have on the ferry. We want to make a good experience for them next time. So we want to get them back on as soon as possible. So we did that. We're working with the ticketing partner before we make Warriors ferry tickets available. We'd like to do that as soon as possible, obviously, with the season coming up in 2 weeks. And so we're working with them to test their new code deployment to make sure that that works and this won't happen again before we make those available. Happy to answer any questions about either of those two items or anything else in the reliability report.
No, that's great. Have we asked Steph Curry or Coach Kerr to take a ride on the ferry? So that would probably enhance our ridership.
Yeah, absolutely. We were trying really hard. No one tried harder than Seamus to get Klay Thompson,
Klay Thompson,
on
yeah.
the ferry. Unfortunately, he's gone. He'll be back on Christmas Day. I think the Mavericks are visiting on Christmas. So we'll see if we can get one of them out there.
Thank you.
Thank
Other
you.
questions, comments? Okay, if not, I think that probably closes the book on the staff report. So let's move to
Oh,
items.
I do have one thing
Go ahead.
on the staff report we didn't cover. On the Fleet Week tabletop exercise, I just want to make one comment, which is I'm super happy to see this and in the couple of items that you highlighted that the team needed to advocate for or raise awareness for. So that made me really happy, but at the same time, I feel like those are the same things that I was advocating for 10 years ago. And I just want to say, please keep at it because administrations change, people change. And when the time comes, I don't want us to still be in this same cycle. So thank you for calling those out. Thank you for making the effort to be there and please don't give up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it seems like every exercise I go to, everyone's talking about similar things. And the most important thing is fuel. And I'm going to continue to press that issue when I'm at exercises to make sure folks know that's one of our biggest dependencies in an emergency response. So.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, as you know, every significant event in the Bay has been responded to from the water. So we'll be right there in the center.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to item 6, which is the consent calendar. It's in 2 parts. Any either of you wish to pull either of those and discuss? If not, let's take a motion on the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have motion and second. Melanie, can you call the roll, please, on the consent calendar?
No public comment.
Oh, no,
No,
no
nobody
comment?
signed up to speak.
No one wants to talk about that?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
and Director Du. Yes. That item carries.
All right, great. Item 7, long-term RM3 capital funding outlook. And I think we're going to take this one with item number 8, approve amendments to fiscal year 2025-26 capital budget, and item number 11, approve actions relative to RFP 24-007 universal charging float procurement. These are related, so we thought we would take these at one time so you could present on the packet. So go for it.
Great, thank you. Mike Gowerty is going to walk us through this presentation. It's something that we've been promising to the board for some time. Really important question. What's the capacity for RM3 to be able to fulfill all of the things that we want to do as an agency? That includes transition of our system to zero emission, obviously, because we have to do that to expand to some of the places we want to expand to. We need to do that to fulfill state regulations. And we also have other expansion opportunities that are dependent on RM3. So critical choices moving ahead, and Mike's going to give us some context around how to make those choices.
Thanks, Seamus. There's a written report in the board packet. I'm going to walk through kind of a summary of that report, try to add some interpretation of anything that was in there. If you'll remember earlier this year in May, we did a similar kind of long-term financial outlook that really focused on operating funds. And that was in the context of the FY26 service operations budget, and hopefully provided some background and context that helped you in your consideration of approving the FY26 budget. This item's kind of got a similar intent for the capital side of our program. So what we're trying to do with this outlook is give you some of that same context and background as you consider the items, the forthcoming items before you today, namely our recommendation to approve the RM3 allocations as well as the award of the UCF contract. We're giving you kind of a big picture, a preliminary analysis of where we stand in terms of the RM3 capital funds that are available to us. The scenarios here are very preliminary. We're going to take the information that we've been able to kind of prepare to date, as well as any input you have today, and really work towards a final product for this work that would be kind of brought forth as part of the business plan. And we'd be reaching out to Director Moyer as well as Director Albas as the subcommittee for that project to vet our work before bringing it before the full board. Next slide, please. So background, a great day in 2023 when the lawsuit, the litigation for RM3 was settled. In addition to the operating funds that were made available to WETA, $300 million, a total of $300 million in capital funds was made available to our agency. That money, from a capital standpoint, has been essential in allowing us to move the capital program forward. To date, we've awarded just a hair over $76 million, which include critical last funds in to support the Mission Bay Ferry Terminal project, the Berkeley Pier Terminal project, the award of 5 battery electric vessels, as well as the RM3 allocation for the upcoming Hydrus zero emissions conversion project. The result of those allocations has allowed us to move forward with significant expansion efforts, in particular, building the vessels and the infrastructure required for the Treasure Island and Mission Bay ferry services. So these are new routes to the WETA system that are operating in some of the fastest growing neighborhoods in the entire region, if not state. It's allowed us to continue important design and permitting work for the Berkeley Ferry Service. We still have a long haul ahead to get the construction funding required for that facility as well as vessels, but RM3 has allowed us to keep that moving, that project moving to a shovel-ready standpoint. And then lastly, in terms of electrification, the allocation of RM3 funds to date has again allowed us to move forward with the construction of the first 5 battery electric vessels that will be built on the continent, which will allow us to complete phase 1 of our reef program and make a solid start to phase 2 of the reef program. So a lot to point to in terms of success, in terms of what we've been able to leverage with the initial 75 million or so of RM3 allocations. Next slide, please. In addition,
Mike, I'm so sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I had this question when I read the staff report. Could you just really quickly, what is phase 1? What is phase 2?
Absolutely. Phase 1 has remained very steady in terms of the scope from the initial onset of the reef program. It includes the launching of the first small electric boats, which would support the Treasure Island Ferry Service as well as the Mission Bay Ferry Service, and the facilities, namely at Treasure Island and Mission Bay, that would provide for those. Phase 2 has been a little fluid since we originally proposed the reef program a couple of years ago. In general, it includes the short haul, relatively short run central bay services, our regional services. And there's going to be a little kind of rescoping between phase 2 and phase 3, but that'll kind of come forward in future items that you see.
Awesome. Thank you. I thought so, but I wasn't confident.
Thanks. Feel free to stop me as you go too. All right, so to date, hair over $75 million in current allocations made of that total $300 million amount. For the remainder of this year, including the proposed action before you today, we are anticipating another almost $40 million in allocations that are required to really fully leverage the investments that we've made to date in the vessels and the facilities to support Reef 1 and the beginning of Reef 2. What you'll see before you is a request subsequent to this discussion to approve approximately $16.2 million for universal charging float at Seaplane Lagoon, $10.3 million for the same facility at Gate G in downtown San Francisco, and those will be before you as recommended actions today. Later this year, or potentially early into fiscal year 2027, we'll also see a request for an allocation of approximately $12 to $13 million to support the charging float and shoreside infrastructure for Harbor Bay. So with those anticipated allocations, pending your approval of those, in combination with what's been approved to date, by the end of this year or shortly into fiscal year 2027, we'll have anticipated allocating approximately $115 million of the $300 million left that we were originally awarded or allocated. Next slide, please. So 300 million less the 115 million means pending those allocations, we have approximately 185 million of RM3 capital that will be unallocated as of the end of this year. It's a little, it's not as straightforward to say that money is all available for future projects. One of the things that we did in the course of preparing this long-term financial outlook was to look at the amount of money that was potentially needed to maintain everything that we're building in a state of good repair. So this is the capital rehab, the maintenance to keep in a state of good repair, not only the vessels, but also the charging infrastructure that we're building with all these allocations. The need here is relatively urgent and relatively significant. And we're going to bring forward some scenarios that show the potential magnitude of that need. What we were able to kind of ascertain through this exercise was that beginning as early as next fiscal year 2027, the costs for our state of good repair program will begin to exceed the amount of revenue available to support it. And this is a function of two factors. First, we're adding infrastructure to our system. We're building all these new facilities to charge vessels. We're building the battery electric vessels to operate as part of our reef program. With the additional infrastructure comes additional maintenance costs. The second factor is the revenues that we receive from the region and from other state sources, the federal government indirectly. Those aren't rising at the same rate that our infrastructure needs are. And so we began to experience a deficit, an anticipated deficit in the first year, FY27. That's relatively small in that first year, but because of the mismatch between the growth of the need and the growth of the revenues available, that difference, that need becomes pretty significant when you get about 8, 9, 10 years out. And so we have prepared some scenarios that attempt to kind of quantify how much money we would need to hold back of that 185 available to meet our state of good repair needs over the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. So the work gets at what is that amount of money that needs to be held back for state of good repair, and more significantly for this discussion, when you less that amount from the 185 million that we anticipate having available, how much remains to continue funding future projects, whether they're part of our electrification or expansion program. So we have 3 scenarios that we'll walk through briefly. Again, a very preliminary analysis. We'll refine that analysis as part of the business plan. All 3 scenarios consider a common horizon year of fiscal year 2037. So that's 12 years out. Typically, an exercise like this would would look at 10 years. We chose 37 because it aligns with SB 63 timeframe. So this is even though there's no capital money available in SB 63, it aligns, the choice of choosing FY37 matches the timeframe of 63, beyond which I think all the operators and policymakers acknowledge some additional action would be required to support not only the operating but capital needs of transit operators. And so we're looking at how do we get through the near-term timeframe through 37, after which a new solution, an undefined solution, would be potentially in place.
And as I recall, that from SB 63, it's something on the order of 7 million a year. Is that
that would in operating funds?
In operating funds, yeah. So if I remember my RM3, isn't it the case that that operating funds and capital funds are fungible? If we had excess operating funds, we could, usually would probably go the other way. But sometimes, I know this is what BART did for a while. They were shifting operating funds into capital. Is there any thought about, the highest, best use of funds that we'll need in the future? I'm sure, like any good public agency, we need funds for everything. But what do you think?
Yeah, and I apologize. I should have clarified this at the onset. When we did that exercise in May, and we did the long-term financial outlook as it related to operating funds, one of the strategic kind of assumptions we made at that point was any of that operating funds that could potentially carry over or be used flexibly for capital or operating, because our operating need was so significant, that we made the strategic assumption that all that money that we receive for operating on an annual basis, and all of the money that we currently have in reserve from that fund, would be applied to operations. And the need there was quite acute to maintain the existing system. We had a projected fiscal cliff of, I think, FY 2033, and so unfortunately, we do technically, through the RM3 legislation, have the ability to roll that money into a capital program if we wanted to, but we haven't assumed that for the time being because the operating needs are so acute.
Thing is, if we got more money somehow, that might not have that same characteristic. We were fortunate that we managed to get that in there, right? And so just to think about, in the future, there may be some opportunity to use funds a little bit differently if we had other funds to back them up.
Absolutely. And again, this is really kind of a first pass, a preliminary analysis of this, of our capital fund disposition. We're going to be refining it as part of the business plan, and certainly pivoting in the future as conditions change, as new funding opportunities become available. It's fantastic that we have that flexibility if we wanted to use it to move those funds between operating and capital. But for the time being, given the operating needs, we've again, made the strategic assumption
Yeah.
that they're going to our operating pool.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to briefly walk through the three scenarios that we've developed that each kind of highlight some of the fundamental trade-offs that the business plan subcommittee and eventually the full board will need to grapple with as we move towards the capital program that will be part of our 12-year business plan. And then, we've highlighted a few questions to keep in mind as we go through these scenarios. So what are the objectives that are achievable when it comes to San Francisco Bay Ferry's expansion and zero emission transition priorities? How should RM3 be prioritized to accomplish those priorities? And then an important one is how successfully will RM3 funds need to be leveraged to achieve the outcomes that we're seeking? In no scenario, and we knew this from the onset of the RM3 program, in no scenario was the RM3 money alone sufficient to fund any version of our capital program. In order to realize our ambitions, we are always going to need to use that RM3 money to leverage external funds. And to date, we've been very successful in doing that. And we'll show you some numbers of what we've managed to leverage to date. And then also show you similar numbers going forward with these various scenarios of what external funds we would need to leverage to have a fully funded capital program. Next slide, please. The first scenario here can really be thought of as our baseline. So these are the planning assumptions to date. And we think of this one as the focus on the reef scenario. This 12-year capital program assumes delivery of all three phases of the reef program. So every existing service, with the exception of Vallejo, which is included in phase 4, would be electrified in this scenario. So you have the 5 existing routes that would be electrified, delivery of 12 large battery electric boats. And so that would be a highlight, the focus on reef of what's delivered in this capital program. The full funds to deliver Berkeley, Redwood City, as well as the service enhancement of the existing routes would not be included, would not be fully funded in this capital program, yet the planning and development work to support those would continue. With that program, over the 12-year period ending in FY 2037, we would need to hold back approximately 163 of that remaining 185 in RM3 funds to maintain a state of good repair, which means we would have approximately 22 million of unallocated RM3 funds that we could use to leverage the remaining 417 million in funds required to deliver this version of the capital program. So quite a high amount of leveraging required of that relatively small amount of RM3 that's remaining in unallocated funds. Next scenario, please, or next slide, please. Scenario B kind of builds on that baseline presented in scenario A, but defers or kind of slows the pace of progress on the reef program. So the major difference here is that we've deferred the 3rd phase of the reef program to outside the scope of the capital program and really focused our efforts as we are today on delivering phase 1 and then delivering the complete proposed phase 2 of the reef program. So the result here, or the outcome here, would be electrification of 3 existing routes, the Seaplane, Harbor Bay, and Oakland routes, a delivery of 8 large vessels. That 3rd phase of the reef program, which includes electrification of Richmond and South San Francisco, would be deferred. And then likewise with scenario A, full funding for Berkeley, Redwood City, and the service enhancements would not be included in the capital program. The outlook here improves a bit in terms of the magnitude of funds that we would need to hold back to maintain a state of good repair. So about $20 million less, 41 million total. And it gives you about twice as much remaining unallocated RM3 funds, so approximately 44 million in this scenario. In terms of the leveraging factor that would be required to deliver the whole program to secure the $244 million in external funds required to deliver the program, much more manageable, higher than what we've achieved to date, but somewhat in line with what we've achieved to date as well. Next slide, please. So this is, I guess you could characterize this as the most fiscally constrained of the scenarios. What we've done here is further scale back or defer elements of the REEF program. Short of delivering the entire REEF phase 2, we would deliver a portion of REEF phase 2. Namely the Seaplane, Lagoon, and Harbor Bay services. So 2 services electrified, delivery of 4 large battery electric boats. The significant kind of addition to this scenario, while it further scales back the REEF program, we would add some investment in the future expansion services beyond what we've made today. Namely, this would include funding in the program for 3 battery electric boats to support the Berkeley service. Again, these scenarios are very preliminary. We wanted to show you an option that kind of balanced an investment between electrification and expansion. One of the things we're going to be talking about, like the key questions prompted in the near-term future, is what should this package of projects in our capital program that we carry forward look like? This scenario, comparable in financial terms to scenario B. It's actually kind of a little between scenario A and scenario B. So slightly more money available in unallocated RM3 funds than scenario A, but not as much as scenario B. Next slide, please. Last slide. This just shows a summary side by side of the scenarios. I think the things of note here, the second column, which shows the amount of RM3 funds that would need to be kind of held in reserve to maintain state of good repair. In all scenarios, it's significant. Ranging between 140, 160 million. Half, almost half to slightly more than half in every scenario. That's a lot of money that, to maintain our system that we need to make sure we hold back, given the present revenue sources that we have. It serves as a huge constraint in the amount of RM3 money that we have going forward, assuming that we make the allocations that we anticipate over the next fiscal year here. Those are the awards before you today, as well as future anticipated items for the Harbor Bay project. Depending on the scenario, anywhere from $20 to $40 million in future funds to leverage external funds that could range in the neighborhood of $200 to $400 million. Again, we've been successful to date in using the RM3 allocations we've made to leverage external funds. Each of these scenarios would require us to kind of up our game a bit and enhance that leveraging factor to complete the funding for the program. On that, I'll conclude and just remind the board, again, preliminary, we're going to be working with the subcommittee to package a preferred scenario and bring it forward as part of the business plan late this year, early next year.
Thank you. A lot to unpack there.
It is a
We
lot.
need more money.
We do need more money. There's obviously things that, like you mentioned, Chair Wonderman, that could change these scenarios. And these are not the only scenarios that we can look at. I think one of the things that is obvious is that enhancement of our current services is not something that we're addressing in any of these scenarios. And so if that is something that we feel like would be the most valuable use of our RM3 capital dollars, that would be a further evaluation that would be needed. Thank you, Chair Wonderman, for combining the items.
Quick question.
Yeah.
To what degree are the costs of delivering the electricity to the shore side included in these estimates?
They are included in the operational shortfall analysis that we completed and presented in May. So they don't factor into the
They don't
capital
factor into
program.
this.
So this exercise helps articulate a little bit how valuable our RM3 reserve is and what we can use it for. And we're asking you to use a pretty good chunk of it today to help us procure 2 universal charging floats that would be capable of operating the vessels that we've already procured. And we've made a recommendation that would focus on that outcome. And Tim Hanners is going to walk us through that recommendation.
Are we leaving this item, or will we still be able to chat about this item before we finish this up?
We can pause. Our intent was to go through each of these 3 items and present on the procurement, the RM3 long-term outlook, which we've completed, the UCF procurement, and then also the budget amendment that would be required to initiate that procurement. But we can pause here and answer questions.
I do have a question. it probably can fit in anywhere, but um, so I really love the idea of rehabilitating and reusing the existing floats, and I noticed that those were going to be at Harbor, and I forget what the other spot was. Do they have to be at Harbor? Like, is there anything about the physical rehabilitation that limits where they are placed geographically?
Yeah, there is, and we're actually going to go in that in detail on the recommendation, but we could get into
No,
that right now.
take it wherever it makes sense. I just,
Okay, and we're gonna give a brief not a brief, we're gonna give an update on the REEF program and what that means. So what stages are and what locations. In addition, we're gonna talk about the 2 universal charging floats that we're asking to award today, where those fit in the system, and then what we're gonna do after that. So
okay.
the
I
existing
think that will
floats.
cover a lot of my questions then,
Yeah.
Tim. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Wonderman, members of the board. Tim Hanners, Director of Engineering and Project Delivery. I'm here with Jan Ripka, Senior Project Manager for SF Bay Ferry. Today, we're going to be presenting the recommendation to award the construction contract for the Universal Charging Float, a major step forward in the transition to zero emission fleet. The UCF is part of the core infrastructure that will power our new battery electric vessels and help electrify our operations to meet SF Bay Ferry zero emission goals. I'll begin with how this project fits within the overall alternative compliance plan and REEF program strategy. Then you'll hear from Jan on design and procurement, followed by Matthew Bell, Acting Chief Harbor Engineer for the Port of San Francisco, who will speak to the regulatory process and our collaboration with the port. Finally, you'll hear from Aaron McGrath, our Chief Financial Officer, who will cover budget and funding recommendations related to this award. Next slide, please. The UCF award is part of our overall plan that was developed and approved. It's the ACE plan, it's the Alternative Control of Emissions Plan by CARB. That was approved on March 6, 2025. This provides a framework for what is zero for SF Bay ferries, zero transition to zero emissions. We're taking a dual path approach with CARB where not only does it allow us to build and electrify and go zero emissions, but it also allows us to keep our existing diesel fleet in service. And so all of our Tier 4 plus DPF or Tier 4 engines, our high capacity boats, specifically in Vallejo, or the Dorado class that we discussed earlier, will be able to run indefinitely with the current regulations. We're able to do that by offsetting emissions. So by retrofitting and repowering existing vessels and then building new zero emission vessels, we're able to offset those emissions and keep that diesel fleet running until technology improves or funding becomes available to build that out. Our plan exceeds the CHG emissions goals, and that's why we're allowed to do this. And once again, it allows time for technology to progress. So for some of our later phases or our longer routes, we can see how technology develops and decide on the best path forward as an agency. Without the REEF program, particularly the ACE plan that we have approved, we'd have to currently repower about 90% of our fleet to meet the current standards within CARB. Next slide, please. Building on that framework, REEF implementation is well underway. We currently have 5 vessels under construction, 350 passenger vessels at All American and 2 400 passenger vessels at Nichols Brothers Boat Builders. We also are in the process of repowering the Hydrus. We're at initial engineering phase, and we plan on releasing an RFP for that in the beginning of next year. Part of REEF phase 1 and 2, we'll talk specifically about just REEF phase 1 right now, and it includes the 3 small 150 passenger vessels that are currently under construction and the Mission Bay and Treasure Island terminals. So both of those terminals will be receiving float mounted charging systems, not the universal charging floats, but float mounting charging systems to convert the power and directly charge the 150 passenger boats. The universal charging floats, the 2 universal charging floats will be installed at Gate G in downtown San Francisco and at Seaplane in Alameda. That allows us to reuse the existing floats that are there. And so a lot of thought went into what was the best location to, one, serve our ridership, reduce emissions, and also utilize our existing assets that we have in place that were fairly recently built. And so the Gate G float in downtown San Francisco and the Seaplane float will be converted to be used at other sites. The Gate G float will be taken, retrofitted, and installed at Harbor Bay, and the Seaplane float will be modified and installed at Mission Bay. I could pause there if there's any questions related to the REEF program 1 and 2 or the implementation or accomplishing this will allow the agency to build the first ferry zero emission electric ferry network in the US, which is a major milestone for us. Reusing our existing floats and assets also allows us to reduce costs, shortens delivery time, minimize disruptions in service, and it also aligns with the vessel delivery and rollout plan that we've developed. Next slide, please. Service routes. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about the service we'll be providing with the universal charging floats and the vessels that are under construction. This will be serving some of our busiest routes at Seaplane Lagoon and Harbor Bay. Plus, we'll be servicing new expansion routes at Treasure Island and Mission Bay. Seaplane and Harbor Bay carried 700,000 passengers over the last 12 months. Operating the 400 passenger vessel on those routes will reduce emissions by 94% in particulate matter and 65% in CO2 based on the 2022 California grid analysis. As the grid cleans up, the emissions will be reduced even further. These UCFs enable frequent high capacity zero emission service across the bay. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to briefly highlight the vessels that are currently under construction. The 150 passenger vessel is being built at All American Marine. The detailed design phase has been completed and is approved, and production level drawing and design is in progress. We expect to start construction in November, December of this year, with the delivery of the first vessel in the second quarter of 27. These vessels will be utilizing the float mounted charging systems at Treasure Island and Mission Bay. We'll also be able to use the universal charging floats to charge these boats, but generally they will be charged at Mission Bay and Treasure Island. Next slide, please.
For 150 passenger size, because earlier we were talking about 50 bike capacity, how many bike spots will you have on these?
I cannot remember the 25. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks. So 1 out of 6.
The 400 passenger vessel is currently under construction at Nichols Brothers Boat Builders. We're currently in the design phase. Production design has commenced, and the delivery of the first vessel is anticipated in the third quarter of 2027. These vessels must be charged utilizing the universal charging floats at downtown San Francisco and Seaplane in order to run those higher capacity routes at this size. And will be charged at both locations. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jan Ripka, who's going to walk us through the universal charging float design, permitting, and procurement results.
Spot. Thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, Chair Wonderman, directors. So next slide, please. As Tim mentioned, the universal charging float is targeted for the 400 passenger vessels and charging of those assets. And so I was going to give you a quick overview of what the concept of design was that we're presenting here today and that we're attempting to purchase. So first and foremost, we wanted to ensure that we maintain similar operations for our current vessels and a similar mooring experience to what we currently use, so that there's continuity of operations and no real change to the manner in which we conduct business currently. Secondly, there was recognition early on that putting charging equipment shoreside was a distinct challenge within San Francisco specifically, but all of our terminals are all in packed locations. Bay Area real estate, as you know, is clearly something that is prized, and putting a bunch of large charging containers and electric equipment is a challenge shoreside. So we wanted to use available real estate that we had, and the only real estate we had was inside our current floating docks. We call them floats. In this case, we're taking the center of that float, hollowing it out, and putting that equipment inside. Additionally, we wanted to ensure that as much equipment as possible was removed from the vessels. As high-speed aluminum ferries, they need to be light. And as much weight as we can reduces the total power demand for the system, reduces operating costs, and ensures that both vessels can meet customer demand and expectations for trans-bay service. So we tried to get as much equipment off the vessels as we could, and as much equipment on the float as we could. Lastly, we wanted to include battery storage for this system. And that's predominantly because we're looking at a very, what we call a peaky load demand, meaning boat ties up, it needs power for 10 to 20 minutes, and then it's off. And then half an hour later, another boat comes in. So looks like spikes. Batteries allows us to take the peak off every one of those charging evolutions, so we can reduce the total demand and experience some cost savings from the utilities who do charge for the total that you pull. Our expectations, and this depends on what rates we finally get through the various utility providers, is that the batteries within the charging float could see a reduction of 30 to 45% in utility costs. So a pretty critical part of the system. Next slide, please. So what is in this thing? Looking at those requirements, we ended up with a design that is first of its kind. There are other floating charging structures. Few of them have, none of them that we know of have batteries, and none of them are packaged quite as densely or in the same system that we're looking at. So first of its kind, and a novel design requirement. So that is a lot of stuff crammed into a little box. And so I'll walk through just from the front end, meaning the right side of the screen there. It's medium voltage power coming in with a switch gear just to make sure you can shut it off. Then it gets transformed into lower voltage power. The reason it's coming in at higher power is so that you don't have to put a big transformer on shore, as well as you have to put less cables in. The higher voltage, the fewer cables. After that, the big gray boxes in the middle are power conversion equipment. So those change it from alternating current to DC current. You could put those on the vessel, and you could take AC power direct to the boat. And you might do that on a larger ferry, say a car passenger ferry driving across the British Channel, maybe. But on a high passenger ferry, it's not really an option. So they're here. In the center of the float, the blue boxes, we have auxiliary space to cool all this equipment and firefighting systems. And then the aft end with the little red lines over top, which are firefighting systems, or the batteries. So that's really the largest challenge is the batteries. From a safety standpoint, they're the largest concern. And I think we've all heard challenges with lithium ion batteries, which are the only thing power dense enough and able to handle cycle times enough to be in use in the system. So we went through a lot of effort to make sure that this was safe. Aftmost in the thing is the charging towers. So the orange lines you see are the actual DC power lines that are going to run up the boat, and we'll be manually plugging in.
The system preclude the diesel ferries from using the pier?
No, exactly the same experience, same mooring conditions for the diesel boats. So that was one of the preliminary design considerations. So first of its kind, that just screams high risk, and was a concern for the design team. And so we went through some risk mitigation efforts as part of the procurement and design effort. First off, we went detailed on system selections and preliminary design. We designed this thing to a 90% level before going out for bid, and went through a lot of considerations. We brought in a charging system integrator to help us determine what we needed. and how we could lay it out. And we paid a good amount of money to our design team to get this as close as we can to production ready before we went out for RFP. Lastly, we conducted battery safety testing. So to ensure that the batteries that we're procuring are going to meet requirements and that they're going to meet the safety standards that we really want to hold and exceed them in many ways, we sought out a battery system that was the safest we could find, which we found, but it's predominantly a European system and is not based in US design parameters and regulatory environment yet. So we conducted early battery testing with them to make sure that fire life safety aspects of the battery installation would meet all requirements. And they do. There's still a bunch of challenges associated with that, and we'll discuss regulatory a little bit later. But we've done as much as we can to make sure the system is going to be safe, effective, reliable, and cost effective. So designed to 90% and released the RFP in December with a 5-month solicitation window. We sought out 3 new universal charging floats with an option for 1 additional. Next slide, please. The pricing that we got back, and we'll get into that a little bit later, was higher than anticipated. And I wanted to highlight what we're going to do and what these floats can accomplish for us. Tim touched on it in his comments earlier, but here's another graphic to help explain what we're doing. So after, and we'll walk through this as how the procurement managed. After the procurement went through, we're going to seek out 2 new universal charging floats. And those 2 will allow us to optimize a delivery schedule for new floats within our system that give us the right charging at the right location at the best time scale that we can currently offer. And so that means Gate G is going to be our first float. And that float, once released from its moorings, the existing one, will get retrofitted and turned into a new universal charging float to be installed at Harbor Bay. That's that orange line floating across the bay there. And the second new universal charging float coming in at Seaplane will be modified in place to install topside charging systems. We're calling it the float mounted charging system. That's predominantly targeted at the small 150s, and that's going to go to Mission Bay at their new ferry landing. Meanwhile, we'll also be installing charging equipment at Treasure Island to make sure that part of the system is ready. Make sure that I didn't miss anything here. I think important to note that there's significant cost savings, or we anticipate significant cost savings once the new UCFs are in place, and not just a utility reduction standpoint, but we anticipate, and this depends somewhat on how well we do at finalizing our rate structures with the utilities, but we anticipate somewhere between 30 to 35% cost savings in utility power, so battery power, electrical power versus comparable diesel prices to run the Transbay service across the seaplane route. So annually, that's a $620,000 decrease in cost to run that route. So there is cost savings associated, though the asset itself is quite expensive. Next slide, please. So we went out for the RFP in December, as I said. Bids came in late March, and we've been working diligently to get to this point to award this contract today, since then. Quickly touching on the procedure, this is a federal procurement, best value. 60% of the evaluation team was on technical and 40% was on price. We did our best to maximize competition for this acquisition. We held an early industry day to try to solicit all the vessels as well as universal charging floats and drum up industry interest. We held that in Central Bay near a year ago and had good attendance. I think there's something around the order of 15 or so yards at present. We held pre-bidders questions conference for this RFP as well to make sure that there was no uncertainty in terms of what we were trying to acquire through the acquisition. And the outcome is that we received 3 excellent bids, all high quality, from 3 vendors, JT Marine in Northern Oregon, Southern Washington, Marine Group Boatworks in San Diego, California, and Power Engineering here in the San Francisco Bay Area. The scoring committee reviewed all the proposals in detail and we deemed that all three were technically viable, thorough, and competitive. And we greatly appreciate the efforts that each one of the bidders went through to submit for this proposal. It's no small thing to propose on something like this, especially given the novel design, and they all presented excellent proposals. Upon receipt, we conducted interviews, and we were concerned about perhaps there was some perceived risk that we had not anticipated on the part of the proposers for what we put into the RFP. And so we asked for feedback as to any place that we could improve the technical requirements within the RFP to have them reduce price or give us a better schedule. And so we got some input and some feedback. We made some changes and went out for a second round of pricing with revised proposals from each one of the yards. And so what you're seeing here is the final pricing that came back.
Do you negotiate the price with the selected proposer, or you negotiate with all, or how does that work?
It's a multi-stage process, and I want to make sure that I'm not going to get myself in trouble here. But we negotiate price with the selected vendor. We sought modified proposals based on an addendum to the RFP, changing the requirements that we had solicited for. So a few things, the warranty, let's say, was maybe too overly restrictive, or there were concerns about the way in which we described the regulatory environment that this thing's going to be built to. And so we clarified some of those requirements within an addendum and allowed the bidders to rebid. So they were able to put out another proposal, and we evaluated them all against their final. And then once selected to the final proposer, entered negotiations to seek award.
So, it's obviously a complicated construction job, hasn't really been done before. And, in the score, although I'm sure it's a qualifying bid, the difference between 11.8 and 14.5 on project understanding and approach would seem to me to be not immaterial. I don't know how that actually works, but I'm guessing you don't really get a second bite at the apple on this too well, right? So if it doesn't work out, we're out a lot of money and we can't operate them.
Yeah.
So is that a concern?
It's not a concern for the reviewing committee, and I'll touch on that now. So evaluating all three proposals, we determined that all three were technically viable and able to fabricate the system that we're seeking. The variance in scoring that you see is somewhat represented by a stronger project management position and perhaps a better worded technical presentation within their proposals. And as a for instance, some of these vendors gave options and alternatives to seek maybe system improvements where we had already specified a 90% design. And so we didn't really seeking that within the proposal, but it did display that a vendor might have a slightly better technical understanding, or they took the time to explain how they had a better technical understanding. Whereas all the vendors proposed and explained how they can build a vessel, a float that meets our requirements as presented within the RFP.
The other issue I guess I raise is the issue I always raise. So, we're choosing to use a vendor from another state when we had a proposal from a vendor that's local. And, I don't have the expertise here, but I hear from folks that when you're engaged in this kind of construction and manufacturing, it's good to be close to home as you're kind of going through this. I don't know if that's applicable in this case, but I guess I was a little bit, I don't know what the right word is, so I won't use any words. But I think it's important for us to try to build stuff here in the Bay Area. Like there's no value that's ascribed to what economically would happen when you hire Bay Area employees, Bay Area workers to do this work rather than export this kind of money to another state to do something that technically could be done here. There's some things we can't do here, and I find that frustrating. But then there's something we can do here, but we do it in another state. So I guess that yeah, my question is sort of why. I know I see how you scored it and price at 40% of the total, where there was a, definitely a material difference in price one out the day, it would seem, but it's a little miffed by the, and with no, you know, JT Marine may be the best operation in the world. I mean, no, I'm not trying to say anything negative about JT Marine, but
Chair Wonderman, if I might, this is Steve. Hi.
hi, Steve.
As a condition of receiving federal funds for this project, we are not allowed to introduce any kind of local preferences of any sort. So just as a black and white matter of law, I think
know.
we all appreciate your comments, but the evaluation committee is prohibited from taking those issues into consideration on a federally funded project.
Go ahead, please, Pippin. Oh,
So as you can see from the scoring, while not being the technical score lead, the total score came in favor of JT Marine, and all three vendors were extremely helpful, gave very detailed technical proposals, and worked with us diligently through the review process and the modification to the RFP, the addendum that we put out, and provided increased or provided savings to us in terms of reduced cost based on our proposal. And we really appreciate the efforts they went through to push them forward. I think I'll note, actually, I'll skip that. My apologies. Next slide, please. So who is JT Marine? First off, I'd like to mention that Irene, I'm going to butcher her name, but Torostoya is present here today representing JT Marine. And they are a full service repair and moreover new build shipyard. Been in operation since 2007. They have 2 locations for their family run operation in the Pacific Northwest, and that's in Vancouver, Washington, and Rainier, Oregon. They would propose that their proposal is that the universal charging float will be constructed at their Rainier, Oregon location, which most recently constructed floating docking vessels for the U.S. Coast Guard in similar size ranges to what we're building here. They have extensive experience building similar structures, so the structural side they're very familiar with, and their proposal was excellent in terms of steelwork. And they have partnered with an excellent team. Those logos at the bottom of the slide indicate who they're partnering with. That's Wärtsilä as the systems integrator, TAI engineers who are doing an engineering support through production design, getting us through that last 10% and into cutting steel. Vision Electric and Red Dog Fabrication are local vendors to that area who do installations for similar work and will be part of their team. TAI engineers are part of U.S. Coast Guard's Polar Security Program, Polar Security Cutter Program, which is a very large icebreaker, diesel electric AC plant. So that's a bunch of technical jargon, meaning it's a boat that has a whole bunch of electrical power in it and handles it safely. So they're very familiar with some of the parameters around our charging system. And it's a good partner to help finalize the design. And Wärtsilä specifying the equipment and obviously more than technically capable, having proven themselves with charging systems for existing vessels in Northern Europe. Additionally, we have previous experience working with JT Marine. They conducted the Gemini class repowers and did an excellent job. We're fair to work with in terms of cost changes and scope changes through that delivery process, managed schedule with relatively light touch, and provided a quality product and a working vessel that we see on the bay all the time. So we're comfortable with their team and their ability to execute this work. And the entire scoring committee felt confident or feels confident that this award is prudent and the best value to SF Bay Ferry in terms of providing these universal charging floats that are critical to our program. Next slide, please. I'd be remiss if I didn't discuss price because it is high. And I think that's an echoing concern from us as we've presented to you on the construction of the last two vessels, and it's similar here. In advance of the solicitation, we sought out a independent third-party marine estimator to reevaluate the price proposals and our budgeting for the universal charging floats. And that's that new ICE independent cost estimate that you see there in front of you. These individuals, this company went through, built out a new estimate and determined an average cost somewhere in the order of $19.25 million to be expected, which was higher than what we had previously reported and you would have seen in your previous budget projections. Even still, we came in higher than that. And there's three factors that we think explain that. One is price volatility and tariff uncertainty for commercial products. And we saw a significant cost increase from Wärtsilä from initial scoping and early meetings with them to the actual proposal process. And as a reminder, part of the work with Wärtsilä, our agreement with them is that once we moved to the RFP process, all preliminary design work complete, we broke communications with them and no longer had an agreement with them. So we independent and had no visibility to the work that they're doing. So it's independent and priced based on their understanding of the market and their suppliers who are also seeing market increases in price for equipment coming out of Europe. In addition to that, that covers about, in the JT Marine proposal case, 20% over our ICE. That covers 10%, just the commercial products increase. There was also an expectation or understanding that the high risk associated with this new technology is more expensive, and that incurred some of this extra cost. And lastly, as we've gone through the design process, there has been regulatory uncertainty on the requirements as they apply to this unit. And we've had progress on that recently, but at the time of solicitation, there was some unknowns, which made the procurement less clear than we would have hoped and resulted in higher pricing. The pricing that you're seeing here is the average for 4 floats, so 3 + 1 option. And as we discussed, due to budget constraints, and I think Mike gave an excellent explanation of our current ARM3 portfolio, we determined that pursuing a third definite float was not in the best interest of the organization and at this time. And so we descoped 2 floats with 1 option. And I ran through the map of what that gets us in terms of providing, the right charging equipment solutions across the bay. I will note that if we're going to move ahead to another one, we will have to purchase at some point another universal charging float. As the retrofit float that starts in taking Gaethje and turning into Harbor Bay, unfortunately, Harbor Bay's float does not match in shape, dimension, or material the universal charging footprint. So you really have to buy a new one to move ahead with the program. If we do move ahead with the option, I should add, we will be back to you to present that negotiation. The pricing for the option is not solidified. It's subject to negotiation and the schedule as well. So be a whole new procurement and board approval process.
So which costs more, the vessel or the float?
Which vessel?
Name it.
The 400 is 10 million more than float? 7? It's about 5.
They're competitive.
They're
I look
competitive.
forward to
Right
the day when external and environmental conditions actually are driving prices down rather than up. This has been a unfortunate cacophony in the last couple of years.
The tariffs have really brought some uncertainty.
You call the White House and tell them to stop.
Next slide, please. So the regulatory oversight and permitting process. We've already received environmental approvals, at least BCDC permit approval for downtown, and we partnered early with Ellen Junk to help run us through the permitting process for this system. She was a great help and moved us quite quickly through the BCDC phase.
Thank you, Ellen. He's right there behind you.
Thanks for waving because it's impossible to see you back there.
Yeah. Ellen could get a permit for anything. That's the thing about her. Go ahead.
Additionally, we've been working extensively with the Port of San Francisco, and I'd like to introduce Matt Bell, who's the acting chief harbor engineer. He's going to discuss our partnership and their support for the system. Yes.
All right. Hello, SF Bay Ferry Board members. I'm Matthew Bell. I'm the acting Chief Harbor Engineer of the Port of San Francisco, and I am also the building official of the Port of San Francisco. So the port has building permit jurisdiction over the downtown SF ferry terminal site, and obviously we've been a long-term partner with your agency. So as Jan said, representatives from the port as well as the SF Fire Department have had ongoing constructive engagement with the UCF design team. And we've recently signed an agreement, both the port and the fire department, that the UCF can be designed to, all the applicable marine standards. That was a big milestone. We've also come to agreement that a third-party peer reviewer with expertise in marine standards is going to assist the port and the fire department in our review and oversight role. So that was another big accomplishment. And so pending the outcome of this commission meeting, we're looking forward to continuing to work with the project team and bringing this innovative installation to San Francisco. That's what I got. Go ahead, Jan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Matt glossed over it, I think, but reaching agreement on the regulatory structure being marine focused has been a big hurdle, and something we're really pleased to report has been cleared. And so we're moving ahead, and we feel we have a good glide slope to get this thing permitted and finalized. Lastly, I'll note we have engaged the city of Alameda since the second float is heading to Seaplane, and they have been supportive of using Marine Regulatory Code and a similar process. We haven't briefed them on the final agreement that we have with San Francisco, and we will be doing that shortly to make sure they're clear on the process and we get something firmly in writing. But early indications have been strong, and we're feeling confident that we'll be able to move ahead there as well. Next slide, please. This is my last slide. Thank goodness, I'm sure you're tired of hearing my voice. And this is a schedule, and we think this is important to highlight for one primary reason. The universal charging float, while one procurement in many, and we're for the REEF program, I should say, it is integral to making sure that everything works and that we'll be able to support the promises that we've made for the REEF system, both in terms of ACE compliance with CARB, as well as our operating partners in the cities that we support around the Bay. And you'll see timelines here are relatively tight. We have the first UCF going to Gate G in downtown in the second quarter of 2027, and we expect a 400 passenger boat to show up a quarter later. Without a UCF in place, we will have a very difficult time, if not impossible, time testing that vessel to its full capacity. So verifying that the thing that we bought actually meets the requirements we have. And similarly, that second float coming into Seaplane is what's going to support the stand-up of the Mission Bay ferry route, which runs into the 150 passenger boats. So the second boat of which should start that service and needs to meet timelines relatively closely. So effectively, we're purchasing more than just the UCF, but a network of changes in the REEF program. And this is a big step forward. So we want to thank you for your time listening to my techno babble. And I'd like to hand off the mic to our CFO, who has the enviable task of explaining how we're going to pay for this.
She's got plenty of money.
Thank you. Next slide. So just a quick overview of the budget that was approved in June by the board was encompassed a $497 million capital program overall. For fiscal year 25-26, there was a $147 million authorization. The actions before you today would slightly change those amounts. It would increase the total program by $17 million, but decrease the fiscal year 26 amount by $4 million. And so just a quick couple of slides to break that down for you. Next slide, please. So for Gate G, for the Gate G UCF project, the original project authorization was $24 million. The new project authorization then, given these costs that we are contemplating, is $30 million. About $10.3 million of that would come from RM3. as shown in the pie chart. And the pie chart also shows you the other fund sources that would make this project whole. We have $10.9 million from TIRCP. We have some small amounts from earlier CEC money and RM1 money, and as well as FTA funds of $8.7 million. Because of the timing of the award, the original cash flow for the fiscal year was anticipated to be $20.9 million. And the new cash flow, the authorization for this fiscal year would be decreased to $12.5 million. And so those two, there are two items on the agenda related to this. Item 8 is changing the fiscal year budget authorization, and item 10 is approving the RM3 allocation amount of $10.3 million. And then next slide is the seaplane funding mix and the changes to that project. If I can get the next slide, please. The seaplane project was originally a 17, just for the UCF, was a $17.3 million project envisioned in the budget. But the new amount, the new total amount is $28.4 million, 16.2 of which is from RM3. And to the right, you'll see the pie chart. There is a mistake in the pie chart where it says TIRCP. That's actually Measure B. We're going to be using $3.5 million of Measure BB. RM3 is 16.2 million as shown. So by far the most proportionate amount into the project is from RM3. And then we have a smaller amount of FTA funds, and we have, we're anticipating a CEC award of $4.0 million. So as I said, the overall project change is from 17.3 to 28.4, and then the fiscal year authorization in the original budget was 6.6 million, but the new cash flow is to spend 11 million basically in the current fiscal year on this project. So again, in your packet today, item 9 is to address the allocation of $16.2 million in RM3 funding, and item 8 is to approve the budget revision in the fiscal year to $11 million. That is the summary of the budget impacts.
Great, thank you. So I have a lot of questions. So Erin, since you just finished, maybe I'll start with you. In the overall budget, slide or two back, can you confirm or deny that that includes the site installations? Because I can't tell from what I read. So are you going to be coming back at a later date for funds for the site installations? Are we only approving the cost of the UCFs, or are we also, is this the whole thing?
For there will be an additional allocation for the downtown site, because we are still working on the layout and the PUC agreements and other things related to that program. We are also working, there are a bunch of moving pieces on that. And so the answer is probably for downtown, there will be another allocation. We just don't know what that's going to look like yet. We think we have some savings through this new plan in the Mission Bay budget to apply to the downtown sites. We're hoping to make that go away, but it is very possible we might need some additional dollars. Not a lot, but could be some there. For the seaplane, we are anticipating, right now that project is funded for the landside improvements through a pending application we have through the AHSC state program. That is a $7 million grant that we are right now hoping to get. We've gotten some really good signs that we're in a good shape for that one. It is possible, if that grant doesn't come through, that would mean we would need more funding. The other thing I will point out is that there is some uncertainty around the federal money still. right now, things are pretty chaotic up there. If that money runs into any trouble, then we would have to come back and have a more serious discussion about the program, I believe. Would you want to add anything to that?
No, there's always going to be some questions around our federal funding. I think that, we would need to make a choice about how to fight that if we got word that that federal funding was truly in jeopardy and or pivot to a different strategy. But we have received some positive signs just before the shutdown from our FTA partners about the time frame and some of the information that we've provided being helpful in terms of fulfilling the finalization of that grant.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you. So I just uh, on the budget side of this, for both Seaplane and downtown, I just want to commend you. I think Seaplane is 58%, if I did my math right, although the pie chart is not representing that, of grant and Fed funds, which is a really high number. So for kudos on that. And I forget what downtown is 'cause I'm not open to that page, but it was an equally large number in the 50% range. So kudos to you all for that. I think it was actually, now I see my number, I think it was 66%, which is outstanding. On Seaplane, the typo read my mind. So no TRCP funds for that one?
No. We have TIRCP for Mission Bay, Treasure Island, Main Street, Central Bay, and Harbor Bay.
Is that a strategic decision or an eligibility decision?
It has to do with when we applied for the funds, you can only, the application formula favors different ridership patterns. And so there's only certain ridership patterns that we can get new money for. So we keep having to, once you've claimed for one terminal, it's hard to get additional money for other terminals that may or may not be interlining with that terminal. So I would just say it has to do with us sort of starting with phase one and trying to fully fund that, which we've done by getting money for Treasure Island, downtown, and Mission Bay.
Okay.
Right. And then moving forward into phase two, yeah, it just sort of flowed that way.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, as I said, it's an incredible amount of said another way, non-RM monies or non-RM3 monies. So well done on that. I'm not sure which of the two of you to ask this of, but I didn't follow the question I asked or the answer to the question I asked earlier. So when I look at ridership, a Harbor Bay would not be one of my priorities, and then Oakland would be. And so I'm not clear on why there isn't a retrofit scenario for Oakland. So why is Harbor Bay jumping to the top versus Oakland?
There was more funding available for Harbor Bay, and there's a considerable amount of work required in Oakland, not only on the infrastructure side, bringing in the electrical power, but also what we'll have to do to install the universal charging float there. And so staff's currently working on that, getting through with the Port of Oakland and working through the permitting and environmental process. But we thought that Harbor Bay was more shovel ready and that the funding was readily available to help move the program forward.
Okay, so I'm just going to regurgitate that. It's a landside issue versus the float, an issue with the float itself.
It's a little bit of both, but as it relates to Oakland, there's a considerable amount of more work required to install the float because of the restrictions in the channel. It's doable and we're working through it, but we just felt like as an agency, Harbor Bay was more readily available. Also working with the different jurisdictions also played a bit of a role into it. Like we were working with Alameda and Seaplane. That doesn't mean that, Oakland, that we're not pressing forward with Oakland and we're not working with them. I know that the staff today was, talking about Oakland, and in the past month, we've had several meetings with them trying to move this forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then one last question for me before let my colleagues have a chance. The BCDC approval, was that just for San Francisco or is that also for Seaplane?
Just San Francisco so far.
Okay, so pending still for Seaplane.
Seaplane, we have final design work that we need to complete in order to represent the shoreside components that are going to be installed there. So what that looks like is going to drive the BCDC application, so it'll be conjoined, whereas downtown, we're strictly have approval for the float itself that install. The larger trenching across downtown to bring power into the site isn't part of that system yet.
And would that be the largest outstanding regulatory permit, or is there an Army Corps or any other type permit that is also on the docket?
There are, but I'm going to quickly get out of depth. And,
Okay, fair enough.
I can pull somebody up if you'd like, but
I just was trying to figure out if there were any other impediments along the timescale.
we don't see any huge ones in terms of environmental compliance permitting for the UCF downtown specific.
Okay, thank you. I do want to come back and chat with Matthew or Mike, sorry, Mike, before we finish here, but please, I've monopolized. Thank you.
So I just had a question on the recommendation of the award to JT Marine. The amount was 47 million approximately, but the cost per UCF was like 23. So the total for the two came out to like 46.5 million. So I'm curious what the other 500,000 is for.
The pricing that was shown and then competed against in terms of the scoring was for the full scope of the solicited RFP, which was 3 floats plus an option for 1. They don't price each float at the same price. Each one's a different price as they try to price in where they're going to do their engineering and the efficiencies they gain from production. So you get good at one task. By the 3rd time you do it, you're pretty good at it. And so you're more efficient. So the pricing is lower. By descoping one of the floats, the average price goes up. But that's the disparity that you see there.
Okay. And then, so the contract award for the two is 47 million, and then the total cost for the 2 projects is 58 million, 58.4 million. What causes the difference in costs there from the 47 to the 58.4?
The lion's share of that is taxes. So sales taxes as they're applied. So that's $2.75 million per float. But there's additionally all the design work that we did up front is part of this budget, total budget for the program, as well as staff labor hours, construction management fees, legal fees, and permitting fees. So all those combine to get us to that total price, which is, it gives me sticker shock every time I see it as well. The disparity is profound, but it is justifiable, I should say.
And the jurisdictions that are receiving the sales taxes, that those 2 ports, terminals? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
So Mike, first and foremost, I wanted to acknowledge and thank you for doing the scenario analysis. I can't imagine what fun that must have been. So thank you for thinking that through. And I think my answer is I want to do it all, as we have dreamed about for some time. So this is going to be a hard, as always, hard choices to be made over time. And I wanted to just underscore that if I understand correctly, kind of all the pieces of work that you and the team have underway. I think Tom's got a couple related to South City, for example. They'll factor into some of the priority. Like this is an organic effort, right? It's not a static effort. This will be ongoing for some time.
Absolutely. Even the operating cost model, we've built the models for the operating costs as well as the capital costs. The results that we brought forward to you in May, they've changed already, and we're updating those on a periodic basis. We'll do the same with this as new costs come in, as new funding sources become available. So they're absolutely dynamic. That's our intent in designing and maintaining them.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record. The other thing that's important, I think, and you stated it when you reiterated sort of what the what the thought process was, what the goals of RM3 were in the first place. But is that ability to leverage $1 for 4 or 5 or whatever the case has been, and how successful the organization has been in that. And then I think at one point you did say we would look at what we've done so far with the RM money, which is in one of the other items. But reading from that, which is, it's an impressive list, I couldn't factor in what our leverage rate really is, and I'm sure there's not a one size fits all, but I think that would be really helpful. So if, let's say, for example, we chose, I don't know, scenario B, which has the highest amount of remaining funds, does 44 million leverage 400 million, for example? I'm making that up, but at some point it'd be good to kind of have an understanding of how important is that. It's clearly important, but how important?
Yeah.
And I don't expect you to answer today.
We actually have a summary of it in the staff report in terms of how much we've leveraged today.
Can you tell me? Can you point me back to where I
Yeah.
think I missed that.
Thank you.
I saw the list of the 115 million. I think it is.
Yeah, it's so table 1, and preceding table 1 in the paragraph, we kind of characterize that to date of the external funds that we've been able to successfully secure, in large part by using our RM3 allocations as a local match. For every $1 of RM3 money that we've allocated, we've received $2.80.
That's right.
In general, in external funds.
Right.
And so one of the things we wanted to highlight in bringing the very preliminary scenarios forward is that even under, the most kind of fiscally constrained scenario that we brought forward, scenario C, if we were to fully fund that program, based on the amount of remaining RM3 money that we think we have available and the amount of external funding we need to bring, we need to do even better than we've been doing.
Right.
So every dollar of RM3 money that we have available in scenario C, we'd have to get $4.30 in external funds. So we wanted to just give, kind of a high level sense of how much more aggressive and successful we need to be in even a scaled back scenario to fully fund a capital program.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. That was helpful. I just want to say overall, I really like the thought process, the strategy that is laid out here with the emphasis on the state of good repair, the emphasis on the leveraging, and then obviously protecting the investment we've made in not only in the vessels that we have on order, but also in our priority of environmental stewardship and the system. And the only thing that for me I'm a little concerned about is our hope for system expansion. And so as we go forward, I want to make sure that we can spend a little bit of time sort of delving into those trade-offs. There's clearly going to be a lot of trade-offs, but thank you for the effort here.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have, this is a good presentation. I think I understand it enough to internalize it. The original, Seamus earlier mentioned the reinstitution of the extension of cap and trade, which I guess they now call cap and invest program, out to 2040, is it? 2040? And the original one that they did had no mention of affordability. But the new one has like affordability is like every second word, because there's much more sensitivity around that. And so, I think what we're seeing, this may not, get down to the level of affordability for a consumer, but, for us, and we're passing on in effect, we're passing on these costs to, to taxpayers and users that, I think the program is proving to be very expensive. So CARB asks us to, requires us to do this. So we're doing this. He's taken a lot of steps, and it's proving to be, we knew it was going to be expensive, but it's proving to be more expensive than we thought it was going to be. It's not CARB's fault. I mean, there's a lot of external factors that are making this happen. But, as we go forward, I think we have to show some sensitivity around, what things are costing, and as we go forward with the capital program, we've proven today, what you proved in your presentation is it's not an endless pot of money. And so the solutions to this are, use money more wisely, be more efficient with the use of money, do less, or get more money, or some combination of the above. So I think, the story of this item 7 is really, okay, now what do we do? Like, how do we go forward from here? We have an expansionist view of the system. As Monique said, I want to do it all. I'm with that. I think we're all with that. So I think we have to figure out a process here for how we think about the funding of this agency. It seems to me it's going to be less likely, I could be wrong, that we're going to be getting more and more and more federal funds to match. And I don't know where the state's going to be. The state, it seems to be sort of okay in this iteration, in this cycle, but there's also a state deficit, and and it'll be a new governor, and there'll be some change in the offing. So I would suggest that we kind of get going on our thinking around how we're going to fund this agency, capital and operations, in the next, in the post RM3 era. And I guess RM3, we continue on the operating side to get annual contributions from that, I believe, but but we'll still need more because we'll have more vessels and more routes, and there's just going to be more demand for funds. And on the capital side, it's runs out. We're going to need more. One thought I have is, should we take a look at legislation that would enable us to make the decision to go on the ballot for funding the way BART can. BART's not chosen to do that too much lately, but that they have the authority as an agency to do it if they want, I think, for bonds at least. And maybe it's something, I don't know what your thoughts are, and we don't have to answer it today, but one ferries are pretty popular, and we have an expansive mission, so maybe the public would be with us on something like that. I don't know. Other ideas, welcome, but we're going to need to figure this out. And I thought we had a little bit more time to figure it out, but it looks like we really don't. The years go by, and we're going to be up against these kind of caps pretty quick. So that's just an observation. So Stephen, in terms of what I think I called items 7, 8, and 11. 7 was an informational item, so are we now voting on 8 and 11 and then need to call 9 and 10? Is that the order of the day?
That would be fine. I think if you're going to vote on multiple items, I just would suggest that you, A, announce what exactly the items are, B, see if there's any public comment on them.
Oh, yeah.
And C, ask if any of your colleagues would prefer to vote on items separately.
Yeah, no, we're going to call them separate. I'm going to ask for a separate vote on each one.
Oh.
But a couple of them haven't been called yet. And I just want to make sure that order is right. So 7, 8, 11, 9, 10. Is that what we want, or could we call 9 and 10 and just take them in order?
8, 11, 9, 10 is the preferred order.
8, 11, 9, 10. Okay, so 8's already been called. So Melanie, is there colleagues, anyone else, any further comment on item 8? Is anyone signed up on item 8, Melanie, from the public?
No one has signed up to speak.
Anyone wish to comment on or ask questions on item 8 from the public here or in the virtual domain? 7 is an information item. What's that? Yeah, that's fair. So let's go back to item 7. Does anyone wish to, maybe that's the most thoughtful item to comment on in a way. Is anyone signed up on that one?
No one has signed up to speak.
Anyone wish to make a comment on 7, address the board? Oh, if not, we'll close 7, we'll go to 8. It sounds like no one signed up on 8.
No one signed up on 8 either.
Okay, can we get a motion on 8?
I'll make the motion that we approve the amendments to fiscal year 2025, 2026 capital budget.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion, a second. Can you call roll on 8?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Dew.
Yes.
The item passes.
Okay, and then we're going to go to item 11. So same as any colleagues, any further discussion on 11? If not, members of the public on 11, Melanie?
No one has signed up to speak.
Anyone wish to speak on 11? If not, can we have a motion on 11?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can you call the roll, please?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
Director Dew.
Yes.
The item passes.
Okay, I'll call item number, motion passes. I'll call item 9, authorize the submittal to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission of an allocation request for $16,186,500 in Regional Measure 3 capital funds for the Seaplane Ferry Terminal Float Project. Is there any member of the public signed up on 9?
No one has signed up to speak.
Anyone wish to make a comment on item number 9 or ask a question? If not, I'll take a motion on 9.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion second. Can you call the roll, please?
Chair Wonderman,
Yes?
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
and Director Dew.
Yes.
The item passes.
And finally, we come back to item 10, authorize the submittal to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission of an allocation request for $10,270,000 in Regional Measure 3 capital funds for the downtown San Francisco Gate G Universal Charging Float Project. Anyone signed up on that one?
No one has signed up to speak.
Anyone wish to sign up? Anyone wish to speak on item 10? Not expecting that you would. We'll close it and we'll take a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion is second. Call roll.
Chair Wonderman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Moyer,
Yes.
and Director Dew.
Yes.
Item 10 passes.
Well, that was a lot. Thank you. Yeah, that was a very thoughtful and obviously important conversation and set of actions. And we did that with only 3 of us here on the board today. So it's sort of important to get our colleagues briefed on these because the implications of this are pretty material. Okay, let's call item number. So thank you. Good job.
Thank you.
Item 12, winter 2025-26 fair promotions. Seems more matter of fact. I don't know.
Yes, exactly.
More fun, right?
Tom, your mic's not on.
Battling someone else turning it on. So our off-season non-commute ridership has been really one of the shining lights that we've had in the pandemic recovery. We've seen, especially the shoulder season, really outperform pre-pandemic levels. A couple reasons for that. A big one is that prior to the pandemic, we decreased service in the winter. We took boats offline and reduced, especially weekend service. There were minimal changes on weekdays, but weekend service was reduced due to lower ridership demand. Since 2021, we've kept high levels of weekend service year round, and we've seen a lot of benefit from that. Here in the Bay Area, we tend to have great weather a lot of the time, including in December, January timeframe. And so folks have taken advantage of the ferry to be able to use it during those seasons when it's running. We still see seasonal downshifts in weekend ridership and recreational ridership more broadly in the winter for very obvious reasons. There are fewer big events going on in the city during that time. There is more unpredictable weather during most of that period. Kids are in school, and so less opportunity for weekday day trips for families. So one of our priorities coming into this off season was to raise the floor of our recreational ridership during the winter months, specifically looking at November, December, and January. We have a lot of excess capacity. We have a lot of service, and so we want to get more people on board in addition to the commute riders that we have year round. So we explored a number of concepts. The 2 main things that we want to do is encourage family ridership and also encourage folks to just get on the ferry, even if there's not an event that they're going to. There's not they're not going to work. They're not necessarily getting to the city for a big event like the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass or one of the other major events in the city. We just want to get them on the ferry. And so we came up with a couple of fare promotions to do that. The first one was $1 youth fares for the 3-month period. We think that this would help extend the ferry to more families. People are smart, they do the math, and you take one car across the bridge, and it's a single toll, it's a single parking fee. If you have to buy 4 ferry tickets or 5 ferry tickets, depending on the size of your family, the costs do add up. And so we wanted to minimize the cost barrier to families using the ferry to cross the bay during the winter. So offering $1 youth fares that would apply to children between age 5 and 17. Under 5, you currently ride for free and still will. The fares are half price for youth currently anyways, but this will provide an additional discount to encourage families to use the ferry. And then the other fare promotion is $20 day passes, which is something we've wanted to explore over time. And this is a good opportunity to do so. This is priced to be slightly above our highest priced round trip fare. So there's not really a disincentive or an incentive for regular normal riders to use this product. This would be if you're taking multiple ferry trips in a day, exploring a multi-leg course. We're going to write up some itineraries to give people ideas on how they can utilize this day pass to visit more parts of the bay and see areas that maybe they haven't seen before from a ferry. So we'll be doing that. And then, to help encourage to provide a news hook or a marketing hook to these fair promotions, we're going to plan some special activations on board. And so the big one that we're going to do is Merry Ferry. And so we've done the lighted yacht parade for a really long time. It's very popular. It sells out very quickly. We decorate that boat. Raphael Regan on our team leads the charge on getting it decorated using staff and other resources. We have that boat decorated. We should use it all season. And so we're going to turn it into the Merry Ferry, operate it on a number of different routes, have some Santa rides and some holiday music and everything, and really publicize that as a way for folks to get into the spirit and get out on the water when the weather is cooperating. And then, using live entertainment to draw some attention to our existing runs that maybe have fewer riders during the winter months. We are going to keep these far away from our commute trips because we've heard loud and clear from our commuter friends that they don't want to hear anything other than whatever's in their earbuds during their commute home. And so we'll limit these to weekends, Friday nights, that sort of thing, where we have minimal commuters, minimal disruption. We don't think any of these fare promotions, obviously, we're always concerned about how it'll impact normal ridership. We did this with the Richmond Free Ferry Fridays last year. We don't want to impact existing riders negatively by bringing too many people onto the board and causing max outs. So we think these strategies will minimize that and avoid that completely. This will all lead into a late winter and early spring commute focused campaign. We've seen 2 points in the year every year where commute ridership gets a bump up to a new level. That's around Labor Day. And that's around basically after the holidays. So mid-January to early February, we see another bump. We think a lot of that is around companies adopting new return to office policies at that time. So this will lead directly into that. This is an informational item, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Go ahead. Good morning.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm going to leave right after my comments to catch the ferry. So I just wanted to say I'm really excited about all of this. I would love to see us collaborate with like the Exploratorium to offer, just to give ideas to families about ways that they could take the ferry to go do things with the kids that are getting these special trips. So just wanted to put that idea out there. And then, of course, I know there are vendors that have long been seeking the opportunity to provide musical offerings on our ferry. So I am sure we'll reach out to those interested parties. Thank you.
Thanks.
I really love it. That was the best thing in this packet. So thank you. Really liked it a lot. I love the idea of the $20 pass. I think that's fantastic. My only question is, so I know you just commented on this, but did you consider February at all? I was trying to look at the historical numbers and I couldn't tell where the turning point is in February, if it's well into the month, early in the month.
Great question. We definitely looked at the whole the whole winter season. February is a shoulder month for us. So we see October, September, October, February, and March really as shoulder months. President's Day weekend has historically been pretty good for us. And so that really does mark, depending on the weather, of course, it really does mark when we're sort of back in terms of weekend ridership. That tends to be a big spark. We do have daylight savings at the beginning of March, and that's when our next schedule change will go into effect. That also really drives, especially evening ridership. We see that go up substantially if the weather cooperates. So very unpredictable around those times. We feel really good about February ridership already, so we didn't consider extending it into that month.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you for the creativity. Super fun.
Thanks. A quick question. So, we're a subsidized public entity, and I believe in anything and everything to get people on public transit and on the ferry system. But, there are private systems that sort of entertain people, and for those kind of riders, that's not a commute service. Do we pick up flack from the private operators as saying that we shouldn't be sort of doing fun stuff because they do fun stuff and we're going to eat into their business? Does that happen?
So the board has received such feedback related to some of our programs in the past. We're really careful to make sure we follow the code and the statute. I'll let Seamus and Steve jump over me here if they need to, but we're really careful. These are all going to be already existing trips. So they're trips that are on the schedule already and anyone could ride. They're just going to be a little more fun. I don't think anyone would tell us to be less fun on the ferry. Certainly there are some concerns around sightseeing trips, and we avoid that. We don't do narrated tours or anything like that. These are going to be existing trips that we're just going to make a little more festive.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. All right. If there's nothing else on item 12, thank you. And that's exciting that we're doing our part to encourage more activity. Any member of the public, Melanie, on 12?
No one has signed up to speak.
Well then, anyone wish to? This is the time to talk about the Mary Ferry. If not, we'll close that one and we'll go to the final item, which is folks from the public who wish to talk about something not on the agenda. Has anyone signed up on that item?
No one has signed up to speak, and anyone virtually is they're available to unmute themselves.
Is there someone who wishes to speak? No. Anyone wish to sign up to do that? If not, we're going to adjourn today in the memory of the City of South San Francisco's former mayor and council member, Pedro Gonzalez, who was a really important figure in getting the service to South City established. So unfortunately passed away very recently. And so we're going to adjourn in Pedro Gonzalez's honor. So the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thanks, everybody.